Welcome everyone. Just going to give it a few minutes for people to join.
And hey, if you are just joining here, I would love to know who's in the room. So feel free to throw it in the chat, your name, the organization you're with, and if there's anything you're hoping to get out of the session today.
Attendees are still rolling in, so we'll give it about 30 more seconds and then we'll get going.
Maybe I said that wrong. Luigi, correct me if I'm wrong. People can chat into the questions box actually and let us know where they're calling from. Name, email, or not email, wow. Name, organization, and if there's anything you're hoping to get out of the session.
Correct. So, hi everyone, my name is Luigi Marshall, and on behalf of Charity Village and Trellis, welcome to today's webinar. Before we start today's webinar, the fundraising drivers that raise you more, the donation augmented approach to tickets, auctions, and raffles, I'd like to quickly introduce you to our organization and go through some housekeeping items. Now, for those of you who may be joining a Charity Village webinar for the first time, Charity Village is Canada's largest online job board for the nonprofit sector. In addition to our online job board, organizations can also post volunteer positions. So if you're looking for work or to recruit talent in the sector, Charity Village is the place to start. We also have a lot of excellent resources for nonprofit professionals, including online courses, articles, fundraising tools, and free webinars like the one we are presenting today. With regards to our webinar platform and how we will use today, you may have noticed when you joined the webinar today that you were automatically put on mute. Since we have hundreds of participants on today's webinar, it's important for us to minimize the amount of background noise so everyone can clearly hear the presentation. But you can still ask questions and make comments using the question box at the bottom of the GoToWebinar control panel. Look for that at the right of your screen. We will be taking questions at the end of the webinar, so please submit your questions as you think of them, and we'll do our best to get to as many as possible. You can also email your questions to webinars@charityvillage.com. If you happen to encounter any technical issues with the webinar, whether with viewing the presentation or with the audio, please also let us know in the question box or by sending us an email. We'll do our best to get any technical difficulties resolved as quickly as possible, but in a worst case scenario, please remember that we are recording today's webinar and we will send you the full recording by email, most likely this afternoon or by tomorrow morning. So if you get called away or disconnected, you'll still be able to view the full presentation. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Rebecca Alfred, the Charity Relationship and Customer Success Lead at Trellis, to kick off the presentation. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thanks so much, Luigi. Okay, we're gonna throw in two really quick poll questions. So Marina, if you wouldn't mind helping me queue those up. First one, I wanna know how many of you are responsible or involved in fundraising at your organization? Just a quick yes or no. You should see some poll questions popping up relatively soon here.
They're up there now, Rebecca. You won't be able to see them, but they are on the screen. So anyone, actually, we've got most people voting now. So just go ahead and click yes or no on your screen, whichever applies to you. And I see we've got the majority have voted here, Rebecca. So I'm going to close and share this poll. We've got 89% yes and 11% no.
Amazing. Okay, next question then. How many of you, regardless of the role that you play in your organization, want to bring in more dollars for the organization you work with or support? Again, quick yes or no would be amazing. How many of you guys want to see more dollars come in for your organization? I think I know the answer that you guys are all going to select here, but I'm just going to ask it anyways.
I think we've got a almost solid 100% there on yes, Rebecca. We're sitting at 99%.
I figured that's what we would see. Okay, awesome.
And I'm just going to see, there we go. We've got your presentation back, Rebecca. Awesome, thank you so much.
Awesome. Okay, I figured that is how you guys would all respond. So with that in mind, before we get started, I'm going to make all of you a promise. By the time that this session ends, I'm guaranteeing that you're going to write down at least 3 notes for my talk. And if you don't, I need you to tell me in the Q&A period, and I'm going to keep throwing more and more things at you until you all walk away with at least 3 things written down. Okay, I'm a little bit nervous about that promise I just made, but actually hold me accountable. You guys have just chosen to spend the next hour with me while I know you all have very busy days, or you could all be outside. So it's my goal to make this so valuable for you and to prove to you why you need to take this new fundraising insight seriously. Not only that, but what you need to do to make sure that you can take the information I present to you and actually make the improvements that are going to lead to results for your organization. Now, unlike most sessions, I'm not going to wait until the very end to share this big breakthrough data that we found. So let's just start with it instead. We conducted a survey with over 1,000 fundraisers, and we found with every additional fundraising driver that organizations added to their events and campaigns, the amount they raised doubled. Think about that. Consistently, the amount that people they raised kept increasing, and this wasn't just with 1 or 2 organizations. This appeared over 1,000 fundraisers. Now, what do your fundraisers currently look like, and how can you steal this model? Now, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about this and hopefully sharing more ideas that are going to convince you why this is the way you need to go. But before that, I wanted to share a quick story about one of those 1,000 fundraisers. St. Michael's Hospital Foundation ran a fundraiser with us in the fall of 2020. It was their first time going virtual, like most of you guys in 2020 as well, I'm sure, and it turned out to be really successful. They raised just over $30,000. They had virtual tickets for donors to buy and offered a silent auction for people to participate in. But as they thought about that same fundraiser in the fall of 2021, they knew they could do better. First, they looked at what they did last year and thought about what their goals were going to be for 2021. Like every other organization, they needed to increase how much they brought in through this fundraiser. So they started with their fundraising drivers. They added more than ever before, but it was a leap for them. They offered tickets that included different meal options as add-ons to engage more donors and raise more. They added a golden ticket item. It was a mystery box filled with items that would create a VIP experience for virtual attendees. For their auction, they encouraged people to use their auto bid feature to raise more and save their donors more time. And they added in a 50-50 raffle and built hype leading up to their event. And then on the night of, they continued to promote it, growing the size of the pot on the night of and encouraging donors to give in a different way. And then beyond all of that, they donation augmented their event. With every type of purchase donors made, they were asked if they wanted to include an additional donation to their organization. It was a simple ask when donors were already checking out, which made it really easy to give and to continue supporting the organization in a tangible way. And it worked. They raised $108,000, more than their organization had ever raised in that signature fall event in the past. And it all came down to the diversity of ways that they gave their donors to participate. Now, why am I telling you this? I want you to know that if you're new to fundraising or if you've been doing it for years like St. Michael's, if you're a small organization or a really large organization, there will be a key takeaway for all of you here today. From multi-person fundraising teams to just one-person ran organizations, these tactics are changing the ways that organizations are hitting their fundraising goals, and I want them to do the same for you too. So here's where we're going to go. Let's briefly review each of our fundraising drivers. Let's talk about how they can help you hit your fundraising goals and some tactics to raise more for each one. Then let's revisit that chart I shared at the beginning and talk about the impact for your organization when we put them all together. Throughout this session, I'm going to share real-life examples and ideas from organizations that have succeeded. My goal for the end of our time here is that you'll walk away with clear next steps on how to raise more for your organization than you have in the past. In addition to all of that, we've put together a guide which provides more details on everything I'll be sharing in this talk. Think of this talk like step 1 and the guide as step 2. We cover the main insights in the talk, but the guide includes more data, quick ideas to implement into your fundraisers, and even a one-pager designed specifically for your boards or key stakeholders to get them just as excited as you are by the time that this talk is done. We'll also be ending our session with some Q&A. So if you guys have any questions at all, make sure that you throw them in the chat as we go, or the questions box as we go, and we'll answer them at the end. But before we get into all of that, maybe we should start with who we are. We're from Trellis. We build fundraising software for events ranging from galas to golf tournaments, campaigns like raffles and 50/50s and auctions, and we work exclusively with charities and nonprofits. We build tools to help charities host all of their fundraising elements in one place for their events and campaigns to improve the donor experience and ultimately help charities raise more and save time. Hundreds of charities have run fundraisers with Trellis, and we have learned a ton from their successes and failures. So I'll be sharing with you some of my favorite ideas and tips to make your next fundraiser a success. I'm Rebecca, and I'm here with two of my colleagues who are hanging out in the chat, Zoe and Oksana. And so if you have questions as we go, they're going to be here to help answer those. Me and my team were based in the Okanagan and are honored to be from the unceded territory of the Sioux people. We wanted to just take a moment to recognize the land that we all get to live and work on. Okay, let's jump into it. First, let's talk about the idea of donation augmented fundraising. Now, if you have not heard of that before, you might be sitting there wondering, what does that even mean? Don't worry, we've got you. Donation augmented fundraising is the strategic approach to asking for donations from guests at the correct moments to encourage more giving, and specifically using those unrestricted funds to support your organization. When presented the right way, donation augmented fundraising has the potential to raise you 20% more for your organization. And don't worry, we're going to keep talking about this concept throughout our session as we talk about some of the different fundraising drivers and how you can implement donation augmented fundraising within that as well. So first up is event ticketing. Now, tickets are typically the first driver you think about when you're planning your events. When we reviewed the research, the thing that first stood out to me was ticketing accounted for 20% of all funds raised in the study we conducted. And again, this was a study with 1,000 fundraisers, so we had a lot to choose from. And in our survey, we also found that most organizations don't spend that much time strategizing or setting up this fundraising driver. So when you don't spend that much time on it, and it has the potential to bring in 20% of funds raised, it makes sense to take it seriously and see how you can further optimize it. When we look at this fundraising driver on its own, the first thing we often see organizations overlook is charging for all tickets for their event. Not only does it secure a commitment, but it also is a great way to increase the amount that you're able to raise. The next big opportunity with tickets is to charge at different price points. Offer sponsorship options, table tickets, or tickets that give a tax receipt portion back to the donor. Without spending more time on it, these are all ways to increase the amount that you're able to bring in through ticket sales. The keys to success with this will be finding a platform that can support different ticketing approaches while still offering options like splitting tax receipts, which will save your organization lots of time. So now that we've nailed the ticketing portion of the fundraiser, let's move on to the next part. But again, I know we are going really quick because we have a lot to fly through. But before we move on, if you have any questions at all, make sure you throw them into the questions box about event ticketing and kind of how it works or how your organization can use it to hit your fundraising goals. We will definitely get to it at our Q&A at the end. And Oksana is going to also throw a link into the chat right now for the guide, as it has a lot more ideas around event ticketing for you to take advantage of. So next up is auctions. In our study, we found that 40% of all funds raised came from auctions alone, and honestly, we weren't surprised one bit. They are truly a cornerstone of fundraising. We also found that according to our survey, Organizations invested on average the most amount of time towards this fundraising element compared to every other one. But the payoff was there. With auctions alone, organizations were raising around $14,000 compared to every other fundraising driver that was bringing in between $2,000 and $8,000. Now, don't get me started on what happens when we donation augment our auctions, but I digress. We'll get back to that later. So there is still a case for auctions, and it is worthwhile doing them because on average they're bringing in $14,000. But how can we do them better while not adding even more time to you guys? Here are some quick ideas for a silent auction. 1, automate your donor notifications throughout your fundraiser. Notify your donors when they're outbid and give them easy options to keep rebidding or notify them right before the auction ends. Those simple texts or emails can keep your donors engaged, and if you find a fundraising platform that can do it for you, even better, you won't have to worry about it at all. Now for live auctions, there is also great potential to use these to raise more for your organization too. We've supported a lot of organizations that have done live auctions, but one thing that has always stood out to me was the idea of a mystery item, and it worked so well that I honestly share it with everybody I talk to. So here's how it works. You announce your first live auction item, which is going to be a complete mystery. Maybe it's a bottle of wine or a box of chocolates, but your auctioneer kicks it off and makes that bidding really low. I'm thinking like $1 or $2. Now you can focus on just getting your donors engaged. And as you know, when donors are engaged, it's so much easier to encourage them to keep bidding and giving. So don't let your guests know what the item is, and then when the bidding is only a couple of dollars, all of your donors are going to be so much more likely to start bidding in it for a chance to find out what it is. When the item is won, reveal what it is, and then use that momentum to go straight into your real live auction items, and we guarantee you'll see more engaged bidders as a result. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not going to deny the amount of work that an auction takes. By far, out of all of the fundraising drivers, it has the biggest time investment. But automated bidding and text notifications should be included with the fundraising platforms you choose. And actually, if anything, they should reduce the amount of time you have to spend on engagement throughout your auction. And doing a live auction mystery item shouldn't be challenging for you to come up with. And it is also a really easy way to drive more engagement, which is ultimately going to help you raise even more money in your live auction altogether. Again, the mystery item is not about raising money. We're thinking you'll probably make $50 to $75 on it, but it's what can happen afterwards that's going to get us really excited about that additional engagement, how you can get more people participating, which is ultimately going to help you raise more. So our next fundraising driver is e-commerce, or as we like to call it, items for sale. Now, to be honest, fundraisers that are just selling items don't generally raise enough to warrant the amount of effort that you put into them. But before you disregard it completely, they are the perfect and most versatile add-on ever. And if we just quickly remember that chart we showed at the beginning, what we found was every time an organization added another fundraising driver, the amount they raised doubled. So if you're sitting there thinking that this one doesn't apply to you, you can just tune it out or hang on, or just ignore it for just a minute. Hang on, because this could be the secret to helping you raise double what you did last year. Add-ons with items for sale can literally be anything. Some of my favorite ways I've seen organizations make the most of these are for their galas. Maybe you're selling drink tickets or a mystery box like St. Michael's did for their event. Or this one was a really cool one. One organization created an add-on to set up voting options for their gala. They asked donors to vote on what songs they'd like to hear the entertainers play throughout the night. Or what about your golf tournament? I know a lot of you are probably thinking about golf this summer or already have something planned. Maybe you can still add this in. Maybe you add in a mulligan that people can buy to use throughout their game if needed. If you notice, those last two examples of the voting options for songs and mulligan tickets, they don't cost your organization $1 to run, but yet they're an easy and engaging way you can encourage your donors to keep giving and leading up to your event and during your event too. And even with small purchases that may only be a couple of dollars, you can use them to hit your fundraising goals. I've mentioned it a few times, but again, I would highly encourage all of you to download our guide, which you'll also find there's a little link in the bottom corner there, and maybe we can also get it thrown into the chat right now as well. But we've got a lot more research to support why you need to add more fundraising drivers to your next event or campaign. And we've got more ideas that you can action to, like the add-on. So again, let's quickly pause here for a second so you guys can grab the guide, and then we can jump on to our next piece. And again, if anybody has any questions, throw them in the chat or the question box, because we will do some Q&A here, and I would love to answer as many questions as possible for you guys. Okay, we have passed the halfway mark through our fundraising drivers, so hopefully everybody is doing okay and ready for us to jump into the last two. And again, like I said, let's keep throwing as many questions as possible into the question box, because we would love to answer them in our Q&A, which we're going to do shortly here. So we love raffles, and we are seeing organizations raising so much more than they have in the past, because of a new approach that is starting to take off. Sophisticated organizations are now encouraging donors to make a donation with their raffle ticket purchase, and the results so far have been amazing. It's the whole donation augmented approach that we've been talking about. For organizations that ran a fundraiser with raffles and donations, 80% of the funds raised came from raffle tickets, and 20% of the funds raised came from donations. So that sounds pretty good, hey? 20% from donations, 80% from raffle. But we thought this is making a big impact on your organization. So let's actually break down where that money is coming from. And let's say we're going to run a hypothetical 50-50. Now, I'm not great at math, so we're going to make this really simple. Let's say your fundraiser is going to raise $10,000. Now, like we just found out, 20% of that is in donations, or that would equate to $2,000. That money isn't part of your raffle, so it is separate from the total raised, but it's still part of your overall fundraiser that you've just completed. Now, because it's a 50-50, for the raffle dollars raised, we're going to need to give, that was $8,000, we're going to need to give $4,000 of that to the winner, or 50% of that to the winner. And let's say that you're going to pay 10,000 or 10% in fees, which would be $1,000. Now, your organization is left with $3,000 in raffle funds for going to your organization. Now, if we look at it again, 5,000 is going to go to your organization. 2,000 of that is going to your organization, just came from donation upsell, which most fundraising platforms don't even support. But we also did some more digging and found this. In some provinces in Canada, there are specific rules around how funds raised through raffles are used, further restricting organizations around how they spend those raffle dollars. So again, of that $5,000 for your organization, 3,000 of it from that 50-50 is restricted. So you really need that last 20% or $2,000 in order to create more impact and value for your organization. Now, I've been a part of a lot of raffles, and I've seen them from both sides. So imagine this. How would your board feel if you told them that you had an idea for an upcoming raffle, and you said, we're projecting we're going to get $8,000 from through the raffle, 3,000 of that is restricted funds coming back to our organization. And then you kind of walk them through what the raffle process is of being approved as an organization to hold raffles, then getting a raffle license for this particular raffle, then setting it up to comply with all the raffle rules, supporting donors through it all, and then after all that, somehow figuring out how to do a random draw for your winner selection. Honestly, at face value, it's hard to see why it's worth it. But what if you walked in to have that same conversation, but instead handed them the board one-pager, and you said that you're going to do a raffle? It's going to raise $10,000. 3,000 of it will be restricted funds, but we have 2,000 that is going to be unrestricted funds for our organization to use as we see fit. Now, I don't know your board, but I imagine that that conversation will be a lot better, and their willingness to invest the time and participate in a raffle is going to be significantly higher. So while we love raffles and we think they are a fantastic way to build excitement around your organization and raise some funds, let's also take off our rose-colored glasses for just a second. When you're raising $8,000 in your raffle, you desperately need an additional $2,000 in unrestricted funds to even come close to justifying the expense and the work that your team went through to coordinate a raffle. And while raffles are great, the only way you should be doing them is if you can offer a donation augmented approach. If we go back to our study for just a second, this is what we found. Organizations that did just a raffle raised on average $4,000, and organizations that did a raffle with donations were raising on average $33,000. Now, I'm not trying to pretend that adding donations is suddenly going to bring in an extra $29,000 for your organization, although that does sound delightful. But what it does tell me is that organizations are raising more with this new approach, and organizations that are more sophisticated are using this approach and it's working. Okay, on to our last fundraising driver, donations. And just a heads up, I am not done with the whole restricted, unrestricted funds idea just yet. In fact, I really want to dive into it here. So we found a study conducted by Imagine Canada that stated that $11.9 billion was given at the start of the pandemic, and only 3% of that was unrestricted. Wow, when I read this, I was shocked. Don't get me wrong, I think restricted funds and unrestricted funds are both extremely necessary for your organizational success. But a key to hitting your goals, keeping the lights on, and advancing your organization is undoubtedly having funds that you can use as you see fit. As the leaders of your organization, you know the needs and the cost to implement different initiatives or simply support your operational costs. And so having funds that you can use and you can direct based on urgency or need is critical. Now, as you can tell, I was and honestly still am pretty shocked when I think about that stat. So I decided to talk to some fundraising professionals and see what they thought about this too. And some of the conversations that we had that were sparked were just really insightful for me. One person shared that, in a word, restricted funds are a headache. They shared that some organizations would even pass up restricted funds if the return was low. And my guess is that all of you attending today would have done the same, or you have done the same thing too. You've passed up on a particular grant because the amount that the program is giving, or the amount that the grant was giving, wasn't quite enough for what you needed to do. You didn't have the right program to meet those needs, or maybe you had the perfect program, but the time frame was too tight and you couldn't afford to sit around and wait for months or even a year to hear a result. Or maybe you actually just needed to put the funds toward operations, staffing costs, or training, which restricted funds don't often cover. I also spoke to Lane, the auctionista, about this as well, who clearly knows a thing or two about fundraising, and they gave me some really great insight. They mentioned that as an auctioneer, they support a lot of larger hospitals and foundations, and the conversation of unrestricted funds comes up often, especially during the height of the pandemic. It was a hot topic. Lane noted that during the pandemic, when donors were encouraged to step up their giving, but not necessarily support a specific program or new equipment or a capital project, but simply give where it was needed within the organization, these donors did not back down to supporting their beloved organizations. They understood that the greatest need and went after that, and I was so encouraged. They understood that even if the systems don't always align with the support we need and how we need it, our donors will step up to the plate and give because they believe in the organization and that matters, not necessarily where the funds were directed. So now, bringing it back to your organization and your fundraising, the idea of unrestricted funds that your organization can use as needed looks even better. And if you consider that with all of the fundraising drivers we've just talked about, tickets, silent auctions, live auctions, items for sale, and raffles, the amount organizations raised as a result of using that donation augmented approach allowed them to raise on average 20% more. Simply put, it would be a mistake if you passed this opportunity. And what gets me so excited is that these results are from over 1,000 fundraisers. This isn't just a couple. So it's clear to me that with this single addition to your fundraiser, you can see a noticeable increase. And I should also mention that this shouldn't be some large, overwhelming task for your organization to undergo or to handle. If you can spend about 10 minutes to clearly define why giving is important and then suggest some donation amounts and include some engaging images, you should have everything you need to grow your fundraisers. Our survey indicated that the majority of organizations believe that the fundraising driver with the highest potential return on investment for their organization is donations. And honestly, we think they're onto something. Now, we've covered the 6 fundraising drivers, some data around each one, and ideas around how you can use those to increase the amount that each one is bringing in for you. But before we end, I wanted to go back to the very beginning. Remember I shared this chart with you? We know each fundraising driver has the potential and can help you bring in funds for your organization. But the biggest factor that led to organizations raising more wasn't what they used, but how many fundraising drivers they used in a single event or campaign. From 1 fundraising driver to 2 to 3 to 4 and then 5, the amount that organization raised each time doubled. So now where does this leave us today? I have just spent the last half hour exactly explaining to you and honestly trying to convince you that you need to be incorporating these different fundraising drivers and using them strategically together in a way that's going to allow you to hit your fundraising goals. And on top of all of that, we've talked a lot about donations, how you can use donations more strategically with a donation augmented approach to fundraising so that you can raise more and so that you can do it without having to put in more time and effort into fundraisers, which I know sounds like a dream. So the first thing that you're going to want to think about is finding a platform that can support all of the things we've just talked about. And actually, maybe that is the only thing you need to think about. How can you find a fundraising platform that's going to allow you to do event tickets and silent and live auctions, items for sale, and raffles all in one place? And on top of that, how are you going to find one that will also support donation augmented fundraising to raise that extra 20% for your organization? Now, that is an incredibly big ask, but it might single-handedly have the ability to change the impact of your success, especially if you want to start raising 20% more for your organization. But with the right software partner, you can accomplish all of these things. And actually at Trellis, we've built a platform to do all these things for you. For tickets, we offered weighted ticket options. We have different ticket price points and the ability to split tax receipt. These are all tactics to encourage your donors to give more when checking out. With auctions, we encourage our organizations to utilize auto bidding and buy now and automated donor notifications, all of which have been designed to encourage increased giving from donors while saving you a lot of time. Our items for sale has so much flexibility to include add-ons, which again are the perfect way to increase how much you're able to raise for your organization. And as the newest approved raffle platform in most provinces across Canada, we are so excited to be able to support organizations with this as well. And with a focus on a seamless donor experience, donors can have the confidence in giving online, which encourages them to give more. But beyond all of that, being the only platform to offer a donation augmented approach to your fundraising means that we can help charity raise even more for the causes that they have, the causes they care about than they ever have before. And as a team of fundraising experts, we have helped hundreds of other organizations hit their fundraising goals. And we would love to show you how we can do the same for your organization with that donation augmented approach to fundraising. Wow, okay, that was a little bit like drinking out of fire hose, but my goal was for you to all leave with some actionable steps. So maybe before we end right here, let me give you some next steps on what you can do from here, and maybe you fit into one of these buckets. One, maybe you've currently got a fundraiser up and running. If that's you, awesome. Make sure to read through the guide we shared to see what are some other ideas you can find that will help you raise more money right away. Maybe you fit into the second bucket. You're due a conversation with the board, and now you have some evidence to support and share the best way forward for your fundraising, which is perfect timing as we get into the fall here. Again, we've created something special just for those of you in this group. In your guide, you're going to find a board one-pager. It's got the highlights from this talk all in one place and is designed to help you chat with your board around the potential left on the table with your current fundraising approach. And three, maybe you're ready to take the next steps to raise 20% more for your cause. Well, if that's the case, this may just be perfect timing. I would recommend connecting with one of our fundraising experts. Like I said, they've supported hundreds of organizations and have seen firsthand what is working and would love to help you do the same. On the screen, you'll find my contact details, and I would love to help you personally and just take the next steps towards donation augmented fundraising. And with all of that, I think it's time that we open the floor to some questions. And hey, did everybody write down 3 notes in your notebook? If not, throw it in the chat because we will change that.
Hey everyone, I'm Zoe from the Trellis team. I'm going to be running the Q&A, so let's kick it off with some questions. We had some great questions coming in as Rebecca was talking, so I'll kick it off with the first one. But keep in mind, as we're answering these, feel free to keep putting questions in the chat and the question box. We'll power through as many as we can. So to kick it off, someone from the call tuned in wondering about the regulations around charitable receipts when donors are receiving tickets or kickbacks. Do you know anything about this, Rebecca?
Yeah, absolutely. So it really depends. I'm assuming that you are based in Canada. If you aren't, and if you're 501c3, I always forget that acronym, so apologies to all of our American friends on here. But if you are based in the States, percentage amounts are slightly different. But they do still have the same, relatively the same percentages. But yes, with tax receipts for things like tickets and auctions, there is a specific percentage that you must be above. With ticketing, I believe it's 20%. So at minimum, 20% of the donation must be tax receivable. For silent auctions in Canada, it's 25%, or yeah, 25%. And then for silent auctions in the States, it's actually just 100% of the value of the item. So there is slightly different percentage points. If you are looking at doing ticketing or auctions and you want a tax receipt, I know at Trellis, we actually have it gated in our platform. So you can only tax receipt if you meet those certain thresholds. So happy to chat with you, and I can give you the exact percentages afterwards if you wanted to shoot me an email with the email that's on the screen.
Amazing. So I heard you mention mulligans. Could you expand on what this is and how someone can utilize them to raise more for their organization?
Yeah, absolutely. I love this idea for golf tournaments. We are seeing a lot of organizations trying to get really creative around how you can raise more with golf, especially. With golf, there's a lot of expenses. Like, it's not a cheap fundraiser to do in terms of logistical costs or time and effort that you need to put in, but then also all of the costs that come associated with a golf course. And so adding these little add-on pieces is a really fun way to do it. So what this organization did in particular is they did their, they had 3 different add-on options people could participate in. They gave away mulligan tickets, or sorry, people could buy mulligan tickets. So if they wanted to do a redo on a shot, they could buy a ticket to do that. They did a 52 card draw. So again, it was one of the games at their holes that they wanted to have people participate and pay to participate in. And then they had a hole-in-one contest. Again, typically they would have done it for free and given away a prize, but they're like, hey, why don't we charge a $10 ticket for people to participate in the hole-in-one contest? And then they can participate in it and we get some money from it as well. They had those 3 types of tickets, and that organization, they raised an additional $3,000 towards a $75,000 goal just from those 3 things. Again, it was mulligan tickets, which they usually would have done for free or just given everybody one anyways. A hole-in-one contest, which they had always done for free, and then the 52 card pickup, which usually people would just put in $5 at the hole when they arrived. Those three things helped them raise an additional $3,000. So again, thinking about what are those pieces for you guys? What are some things that you're doing in your golf tournaments or maybe with your galas or other types of events you have running? And how can we charge or upsell people on some of these small pieces for the potential to be raising some extra money?
Great, we'll move on to the next one. Brianne tuned in wondering, can you share some ideas for items for sale for fundraisers that are being held as campaigns rather than events? Do you have any ideas around that?
Yeah, definitely. We've seen some really cool things. I mean, some organizations have had a community cookbook. So they have their community cookbook, which they sell items for. One organization, phenomenal, Shoe Swap Trail Alliance. So they did an entire fundraiser. It was all a campaign. They did not do a single event element with it, but they had a silent auction with it. They sold items, so they had some swag that they were selling. It all got donated to them, and they were able to just sell it. And then they also had donations and a raffle with it. So they included 4 different fundraising elements. They raised about $75,000 as well, actually. I didn't just make that number up. It was both of them raised 75. They raised about $75,000 earlier this year, and it was purely a campaign. So they had some toques that they were selling. Yeah, they had just like different swag items. I've seen community cookbooks. We've seen t-shirts, water bottles, giving hearts or kind of like memorial hearts. Especially some of our bereavement-based organizations or hospices will do things like that as well. Again, just different ways that you can engage people through items for sale.
Okay, now going back to auctions, have you seen, we're still on items here. So what types of items have you seen especially successful in auctions for auctioning off?
Yeah, definitely. We have seen a lot of really different items being used. And so one of my favorite, or kind of the 2 items that I see are honestly the most popular, is the, well, this was last year, so hopefully this still rings true to this year. One, we've seen people be really successful with doing what they've called coffee and a conversation. It's really just been a coffee and like a virtual coffee and a 30-minute conversation or an hour-long coffee conversation with a celebrity, an influencer, or somebody in your community that is of note that your donors would like to engage with. I've seen everybody from some local celebrities to some like social influencers to political leaders to lawyers, like such a mix, but it's just a really fun way to engage with different people. And often the people that you are asking for people to bid on to do these coffees with are not people that you and I get to talk to on a daily basis. So we can have some really cool and different conversations. What I also love about that is you're asking somebody to give up 30 minutes of their time, and maybe you're throwing in a $10 Starbucks gift card. So the commitment is actually really low as well. So I know a lot of people are feeling a lot of fatigue around asking for more donations. This is a donation of time rather than a physical or tangible item, which really helps people. The other thing, also experience-based, that we have seen a ton of success with is people doing a dinner party with friends and having a private chef come. So hiring a private chef to come to your house and cook a meal. Again, it's just a really fun way that you can engage people. Now, I say that with a bit of an asterisk because that was really popular in like fall season of 2021 when we were still very much in a pandemic. Now, we are still in a pandemic, but you know what I mean? But as we get into the fall and there are more and more things opening up, that may shift. But the learning I would take from that instead would be, can you do different things that are engagement-based and experience-based that are gonna really appeal to your donors? And maybe it's an activity or an experience they don't often get to enjoy that you can do as an auction item.
Okay, and you talked a lot about donation upsells. How easy are they to set up? Someone was wondering, does adding the donation mean including a donation envelope or a form at each guest plate, or is it built into the ticket purchase?
Yeah, definitely. So super easy to set up. The donation upsell, I mean, from a Trellis standpoint, we've tried to make it as easy as possible. You literally go in there, you add in how much you want your donation options or upsells to be, put in a quick description if you want, throw in a picture if you want, and then you're good to launch. And that would just show up as a donation. So when people are going through their checkout, they'll be asked if they want to make an additional donation and they can add it to their cart. The second part of your question, does adding the donation mean including a donation envelope or format each guest plate? Or is it built into the ticket purchase? Yeah, so it's built into the ticket purchase. So you guys don't even have to print anything. It's honestly the best. And if you are tax receipting it, then a tax receipt would show up in your donor's inbox instantaneously as well, along with their itemized receipt and everything else that they needed to get.
Okay, now somebody else had a really interesting question. They haven't reached charity status yet and find that this might be holding people back from donating. Do you have any advice around this?
Yeah, we've seen quite a few organizations that don't have charity status that are still asking for donations. What we typically find is that tax receipts, although they are a lovely add-on and people do really appreciate receiving a tax receipt, that they often aren't the one piece that's hinging on people donating or not donating. So what I would do is I would encourage you to really focus on sharing the story of your organization instead. Get people bought into what you do and why you do what you do. Share stories of impact, share stories about how you can help people to give in their community or to participate in what's happening through your organization and the community. And that's going to be what's going to allow you to still continue to receive donations, even though you don't have charity status yet. I don't know about you, but when I go to donate to somewhere, the first thing I check is not if they have charity status. What I check first is what are they doing and what's that money going towards, because I want to give to something that I feel good about. And so if you can share that story of impact and that story of what you do and the difference you're making, that's going to help you raise more. And even if you do have charity status, like that, I think rings true for everybody. So as you're setting up donations, and especially as we really encourage you to take this donation augmented approach, really think about sharing that story. Why does it matter that I give to your organization? There are over 200 of you on this call today. I'm assuming mostly from different organizations. So there is a lot of organizations to choose to give to. But sharing the why behind what you do is going to help you stand out and really engage your donors on a deeper level.
Okay, and next we have the burning question of the hour. Is Trellis able to run raffles in Ontario?
I was like half dreading this question because I knew it was going to come up, and then half really excited about it at the same time. Okay, at this point, we are not approved to run raffles in Ontario. If you are already a Trellis customer, and I have been saying that to you for like way too many months, I am so sorry. We are hopefully going to be approved very, very shortly. We are doing everything we can to make that happen. But if you want to be the first people to know when we are approved, please send an email to rebecca@trellis-events.org. We will add you to the list, and the day we are approved, you can guarantee that we will be personally emailing you to let you know how you can apply and how you get started. We're really pushing to try and make that happen before the fall. Unfortunately, it is not in my hands, so I can't guarantee that, but we are very hopeful it'll be before the fall. But again, shoot us an email. If you have an email for anybody else at Trellis as well, send it to that email as well. We're adding you to our list, and I will personally make sure that we have emailed all of you the day it happens. We are, just so you know though, we are approved in a lot of other provinces. So BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Nova Scotia. I'm missing a lot of other provinces. PEI, Newfoundland, it's like 7 provinces. So Ontario, we are working on it and we are getting there as fast as humanly possible.
Sorry for the tough question there, Rebecca, but we'll go back to marketing a little bit here. So how would you promote an event with so many drivers all at once? You know, it's hard just promoting an event, just a raffle, but does it make it more time consuming when you have more drivers?
That's a really good question. And the other question that I often get is, how do you make sure that each fundraising driver, when you have so many, gets their own time in the spotlight? And how do we like accurately kind of promote them all. So what I would really encourage you to do is really focus on maybe highlighting different ones at different points. So let's say you're going to start promotion 2 months before your event. In that first 2 months, the first maybe month or 3 weeks of that, you're really going to be pushing ticket sales because that's the first thing. After that, you're going to really want to be pushing things like your silent auction. Maybe you're launching a different silent auction item of the week or of a few days. You know, you highlight a different one a couple times a week. Same with your raffle. Maybe at certain points you're going to be promoting that more heavily. So what I think actually having multiple fundraising drivers does is it gives you way more content for social and newsletters and on your website of different things to talk about, because there is just more things to talk about. And then also recognizing that when you have multiple fundraising drivers, then people can engage with all of them kind of simultaneously. One of the things that at Trellis we've really made a focus on, and I've actually sat down with our product team often to kind of talk with them through this and figure out how we can do this best, is having all of these fundraising elements in one page. So if I am maybe prompted to go buy a ticket because I saw something on social media, but then I see that I can also buy a raffle ticket and make a donation in the same checkout, like I am all over that. You know, so even if you're promoting multiple things at different times, having everybody come back to one central place means that you can make the most of all your fundraising drivers, even if you're not talking about each one every day. But again, I would focus on maybe thinking about the timeline of your event and your promotion schedule. How can you kind of ebb and flow between each one so that each gets their moment in the spotlight and you can pull on each one to keep your content fresh and relevant, even if we're talking about ultimately the same thing for 3 months.
Amazing. And just on the note of marketing, on our website, we do also have a guide about marketing. So feel free to download that too. It's in the banner on our website at trellis.org. But we'll move on to the next question. Does Trellis send tax receipts for donations?
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe Oksana, if you wouldn't mind just grabbing that link and throwing it in the chat too, so people can see that guide to marketing, that would be amazing. Just so I want to make sure everybody can get a hold of it because it is really valuable. But yes, we do send tax receipts for donations. What we do is you actually set it up, so it's all your branding and your organization. We're just the middleman that just makes sure that that the tax receipts are sent to the correct individual at the right time. How we do it is we just send it as soon as a ticket purchase is made or a donation is made. They will automatically receive their tax receipt.
All right, forgot to come off mute there. Still some technical difficulties, of course. So we talked about those crucial software elements, and we've had a few people asking kind of about what's the right fundraising platform, what's the best ticketing platform that are able to do this.
Absolutely, yeah. So there's a lot of fundraising software out there, and there's a lot of fundraising platforms that you can kind of do a mix of different things with. We still have a handful of organizations that will use things like Eventbrite for ticketing or Canada Helps for ticketing. We're seeing more and more organizations are using Givergy or Greater Giving, especially for auctions and live event experiences. And then for raffles, we're seeing most organizations will be using either Ascend, Rafflebox, or Raffle Nexus. Those are kind of the three that kind of stand out the most. It would be weird if I didn't mention Trellis. We also would be able to support you with all these things. Kind of the one piece that we really encourage our donors and our organizations with is we're the one platform that does it all in one place. We do tickets, donations, auctions, silent and live auctions. We have raffles and 50/50s. We sell items. You can even live stream through our platform, and then we have a check-in app. So for in-person events, we can support that as well. And then of course, supporting your fund and needs and also your live auctions as well. So we are kind of, our goal is to be the one-stop shop for all of your fundraising needs, especially for your galas and golf tournaments, and then also your campaigns. But lots to choose from out there, that's for sure.
And we've got a great follow-up question to that around pricing of Trellis. How much does it cost to use Trellis?
Yeah, so we've got a couple different pricing plans depending on what you're doing. So for ticketing, donations, and auctions, we have a free plan. So if you're just looking to try something out, if you're newer to fundraising, or if you're like, we just don't have the budget to give to something annually, we do have a free plan, which is just transaction based. And then you're just charged a transaction fee on every purchase that's made. With that one, it's about a 3.5% transaction fee. And then we do also have a pro plan. So if you're like, you know what, we want to find a platform that we can really work with for the year. We've got some signature events we really care about, and we want some extra support as well. We have a plan for that as well. It'd be an annual fee around $35.88. And then also you've got a transaction fee of 1.5%. With those both, you do have your processing fee. We use Stripe as our payment processor. And then raffles and 50/50s, just to make things confusing, we have two different plans for that as well, 6% or 8% trellis fees, depending on each plan that you choose. Again, we're a bit cheaper than some of the other competitors, so for everybody that's not in Ontario, then I would also highly encourage you check that out, just so you guys can save a little money. And Ontario, I promise, we're coming soon, and we're going to keep those prices because I know that there's, other platforms can be pretty pricey, and so we want to make sure that you guys have affordable options as well.
Okay, we're powering through. We're almost through here. So how would you determine the right ticket price and donation levels for an organization?
Ooh, good question, Kate. This is kind of a bad answer, but it really depends. I hate when people say that to me, but sorry, because it does really depend. But what I would do is, first thing I would do is look at your organization. If you've done events in the past, I would take a look at which ticket packages were the most popular. And then I would think about, what are we adding this time? What does the value of the event look like this time? And can we afford to charge the same amount? If you've never done events before, or if this is kind of new for you, I would take a look at what other organizations of a similar size in your community are doing. How much are they charging for things? What does that look like? And the same applies for your raffles as well. For donations, I would take a look at the donations that have come into your organization for the past 3 to 6 months. And besides your major gifts that have come in, look at all of the other donations that have come in, and you'll probably start to see some trends towards some specific sizes. So maybe one that's up to $50, maybe between $50 to $100, and then maybe you've got a 100+ option. So maybe it's about $200. I don't know. If you're looking at donation options, I would try and stay within those figures of kind of that typical range of what you see. I always encourage people have 3 different donation options at minimum. Human psychology is that we always pick the middle option. We don't want to look like we're cheap, but we also don't want to go too high. So your middle option will likely be your most popular, but giving 3 just gives your donors options to choose from. So that's how I would approach it. I'd look at what other people are doing. I would look at what we've done in the past, and then I would just throw some numbers out there. And if it works, awesome. And if it doesn't, then go back to the drawing board, start to adjust, and just start to see. And you'll quickly pick up on what's working for your organization. And hopefully over time, you'll be able to increase those amounts as you increase your donor base and as your donors change and shift as well.
Okay, we got one final question here. Does Trellis have any support for people, donors and people buying tickets? A lot of this person's particular donors are not exactly technically savvy.
Yeah, absolutely. We have tried to make our platform as user-friendly as possible. We know that most donors typically fall into an older demographic, and so we've tried to build Trellis to be so user-friendly for that demographic so that it's really easy for them to participate, and ultimately giving them the confidence to engage with you, because that's going to be how you raise more money. So we do have that in there as well. We do have some support options, so if your donors do need additional support, there is options for them to email and things like that, or we make sure that your contact details are readily available as well, so that they can contact you if they have any questions around the fundraiser or technical questions that we can assist with.
Okay, well, that was my last question. So if you didn't get your question answered, make sure you email Rebecca on the screen, and make sure you email her too if you didn't write down 3 points from this session. I'll hand it back to Tracy.
I always ask halfway through, I'm like, did everybody write down some notes? And I forgot to ask. But I know that was a lot of talking for me. So yeah, like Zoe said, please email, download the guide, or you can also book a call with us too if you want to chat further and just talk to another human from the Trellis team and just learn a little bit more. But with that, I'd love to pass it over to the Charity Village team.
Rebecca, Zoe, Oksana, thank you very much to you all for a great presentation today. Thank you to all our attendees today for joining and for some wonderful questions. I just want to remind everyone that you'll all receive a follow-up email later today with a link to the webinar recording, and please feel free to share this link with your colleagues. The email will also include a survey link that you can fill out with your feedback on today's webinar. and we'll be sure to share that with our presenters. On behalf of Charity Village and Trellis, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you'll join us for next month's free webinar covering budgeting and forecasting for nonprofits and charities. You can find more information on this and all our upcoming webinars at charityvillage.com/webinars. Thanks again for taking part in today's webinar, and I wish you all a wonderful rest of your day.
Awesome. Have a great day, guys. Thanks so much for joining.